The High Synod of the Ethelgardian Ascendancy did not convene for trivialities. The silence that hung within the obsidian dome of the Grand Chamber was heavy with the weight of civilizations. A stillness so profound that the hum of the grav dampeners felt like a thunderclap against the nerves of the gathered delegates. Light filtered through the translucent, bioluminescent veins of the towering walls, cast long, shifting shadows across the circular table where the representatives of the galaxy's oldest empires sat in judgment, their forms obscured by ceremonial robes and atmospheric suits, designed to mimic the environments of a dozen different homeworlds. At the center of the room, a holographic projection flickered, a desolate gray sphere orbiting a dying yellow star, a visual testament to what the Synod believed to be the ultimate folly of a young, reckless species. They called it the Sol Failure, a cautionary tale whispered in the academies of the core worlds, a story of a species that had reached too far too fast and had broken itself against the immutable laws of physics, leaving behind only a silent, dark husk where a civilization once thrived. The readings are consistent with total collapse, Intendant Zulcora murmured, his voice a series of clicking mandibles translated into the sterile common tongue by the synthetic collar around what passed for a neck. The energetic signature of the Sol system has not fluctuated in 3 cycles. The entropy levels are absolute. They attempted the Great Filter and they were extinguished. We are wasting resources monitoring a graveyard. Zulcora leaned back, his compound eyes reflecting the dull gray image of the dead human world. The Ethelgardians were a practical people, masters of efficiency and resource management. To them, waste was the only true sin, and the continued observation of humanity's tomb was a heresy of logistics. The quarantine zone should be dissolved. The lanes should be opened for salvage. If there is any technology remaining in that debris field, the Ascendancy claims right of first discovery. Salvage? The word was spat with disdain by High Counselor Alara of the Vexil, a tall, slender being whose skin shimmered with a faint psionic resonance. You speak of scavenging the bones of the dead, Zulcora, typical of the Ethelgard, but you miss the danger. The failure of the humans was not merely a collapse of infrastructure, it was a metaphysical rupture. When they attempted to pierce the sublayer, they didn't just blow up their generators. They scarred the local fabric of reality. That silence you despise, it is not emptiness, it is a wound that we fear has not stopped bleeding. Alara stood, her robes rippling as if caught in an invisible wind, her gaze sweeping the room. The Vexil seers have felt tremors in the psychic lattice, ripples emanating from that dead star, not of life but of pressure. Something is building behind the silence. To dissolve the quarantine is to invite the void in. A heavy, grinding sound emerged from the far side of the table, the shifting of rock against metal. Grand Marshal Thoron of the Crag, a species of lithid giants, spoke without standing, his voice resonating through the floor plates. Fear, greed, always the same. The humans were weak, soft shells, soft minds. They built ships of glass and fire, thinking they could conquer the dark. They failed. If there is a pressure, we crush it. If there is salvage, we take it. The Crag vote to send the fleet. Not to scavenge, but to secure. We will burn the system clean if we must, to ensure this wound is cauterized. Thoron's fist, a boulder of granite and iron, rested heavily on the table. We have debated this for a cycle. The Sol anomaly is a stain on our maps. Remove it. The debate raged on, a cyclical argument of philosophy versus pragmatism, fear versus greed. The Synod was paralyzed, as it had been for centuries, trapped in the inertia of its own bureaucracy. They were the elder races, the guardians of stability, yet they were frightened of a silence they could not comprehend. Humanity had been a flash in the pan, a species that had burst onto the galactic stage with loud, chaotic energy, demanding seats at tables they had not earned, proposing technologies the elders deemed impossible. And then, abruptly, they had gone dark. A catastrophic energy spike, a scream across the subspace bands, and then, nothing. For 50 years, Sol had been a black hole of information. No ships left, no signals entered. Just a sphere of impenetrable silence that the Synod had labeled a failure. But the silence was about to break. The sensor grid, a chaotic web of lights hovering above the central table, suddenly turned a violent crimson. Alarms, rare and piercing, shattered the decorum of the Grand Chamber. Delegates recoiled, their translators garbling in panic as the holographic projection of the Sol system expanded, shifting from the dull gray. The dead star to a blinding, pulsing white. Report, Zulcora screeched, his mandibles chittering in agitation. Is it a solar flare, a collapse of the primary star? No, the synthetic voice of the chamber's AI responded, calm and terrifyingly devoid of emotion. It is a translation event, multiple vectors, massive displacement, origin, Sol system, destination here. The room froze, the impossible was happening, the dead were coming. Space outside the station's viewports tore open. It was not the elegant, spiraling blue tunnel of a standard hyperdrive, nor the brute force spatial tiers used by the crag. This was something else, a silent, geometric unfolding of reality, as if the universe itself was stepping aside to allow passage. From the void emerged a vessel of colossal proportions, a monolith of matte black metal that drank the light of the local stars. It bore no weapons ports, no glowing engines, no bridge towers. It was a perfect, seamless slab, kilometers long, hanging in the void like a judgment. The Synod delegates watched in paralyzed horror. The ship was scanning them. They could feel it, not a sensor ping, but a physical weight pressing against the station's shields, a gaze that stripped away secrets. Hailing frequency active, the AI announced. Audio only, high-band encryption, cracking, complete. The voice that filled the chamber was not the desperate plea of a survivor, nor the aggressive bark of a conqueror. It was a voice of absolute, terrifying calm. It was human. "This is Admiral Vance of the Terran Reclamation Initiative," the voice said, the tone resonant and steady, echoing with a clarity that silenced the panicked whispers of the aliens. "We apologize for the interruption of your council. We have monitored your debates regarding our condition. We are here to correct the record." Alara of the Vexil stepped forward, her psionic aura flaring with defensive instinct. You are extinct. The Sol failure destroyed your civilization. We saw the collapse. We felt the death of your star." "You saw what you expected to see," Vance replied, the voice carrying a hint of weary patience. "And you felt the closing of a door, not the end of a life. 50 years ago, humanity discovered that the Galactic Concordat's use of zero-point energy drives was destabilizing the dimensional membrane of this sector. We tried to warn you. You called us young, reckless. You dismissed our data as the errors of a primitive species. So we did the only thing we could. We withdrew. We initiated the blackout not to hide our death, but to hide our work." "Work," Thorin rumbled, his stone brow furrowing. "What work requires the silence of a star system?" "Restoration," Vance said. The black monolith outside the station began to shift. Sections of the hull retracted, revealing not cannons, but emitters of a light so pure and complex it defied the visual spectrum of half the species in the room. A beam, thin as a needle but bright as a sun, shot out from the human ship, bypassing the station entirely and striking a point in empty space coordinates away. "Observe," Vance commanded. The view screen magnified the target area. There in the deep black, a tear in reality, a microscopic fracture the Synod had ignored for millennia, suddenly flared. It was a leak in the universe, a point where entropy was bleeding in from the chaotic void outside time. The Vexil seers had felt it as pressure, but they had never understood its source. The human beam struck the fracture, and for a moment the universe screamed. Then silence. The tear stitched itself shut. The chaotic bleeding stopped. The background radiation of the sector, which had been slowly rising for 1,000 years, dropped instantly to nominal levels. The Synod was stunned. The crag marshal sat down, the stone of his chair groaning. The Ethel Guardian intendant's mandibles went still. You fixed the sublayer," Alara whispered, her mind reeling at the implications. "That is impossible. The energy requirements, the calculation depth. It would require a planetary supercomputer running for a century. Or a civilization united in a singular purpose for 50 years, Vance's voice returned. "We turned our entire system into a processing engine. We dimmed our sun to power the calculations. We endured the cold and the dark because we knew that if we didn't fix the damage your drives were causing, the galaxy would unravel within 3 generations. We didn't fail, counselors. We were holding the ceiling up while you argued about the furniture." The shame in the room was palpable, a physical heat. The species that had mocked humanity, that had debated scavenging their graves, now looked upon a vessel that demonstrated a mastery of physics far beyond their own. The humans had not just survived, they had ascended. They had sacrificed their golden age, their comfort, their place in the galaxy, to save the very people who had looked down on them. "Why, Zul?" Cora asked, his voice trembling. "Why return now? If you have solved the problem, why break the silence?" "Because the repair is only temporary," Vance said, and for the first time the calm in his voice cracked, revealing a deep, steel-hard edge of urgency. "We have patched the hull of the ship, but the storm is still outside, and it has noticed us. The energy signature of our repair work. It acted as a beacon, Something is coming, something from the void that hungers for the stability we just restored. The holographic display changed again. The Sol system vanished, replaced by a map of the galactic rim. A shadow was moving there, a cloud of darkness that blotted out stars. It was not a fleet, it was a presence. The silence of Sol was our shield, Vance continued. Now that we have acted, the shield is down. We are here to offer you a choice. You can continue your debates, your petty trade wars, and your arrogance and be consumed. Or you can acknowledge that the failed species you pitied is the only one with the shield technology to hold back the dark. We do not ask for a seat at your table anymore. We are building a wall. We are asking if you want to be behind it. The grand chamber was silent again, but the texture of the silence had changed. It was no longer the silence of stagnation or arrogance. It was the silence of awe and of fear and of a dawning realization. The humans were not the children of the galaxy. They were the weary engineers who had been working in the dark while the children played. Thoron of the Crag was the first to move. He stood up, his massive height casting a shadow over the table. He looked at the screen, at the black ship, and then at the dark cloud on the map. He slammed his fist onto the table, not in anger but in resolution. "The Crag fleets will form on your wing, human," the giant rumbled. "We do not hide behind walls, we stand on them." Ilara bowed her head, her psionic aura turning a resolute gold. "The Vexil will provide the navigational foresight. We will not be blind again." Zulkora looked at his data pads, at the efficiency reports that were now meaningless in the face of extinction. He tapped a command, dissolving the salvage protocols. "The Ethilgard, we will manage the logistics. If you are building a wall, you will need materials. We will strip whole moons if we must." "Good," Vance replied. "Coordinates for the rendezvous are being transmitted. Prepare your people. The silence is over. The noise of survival is about to begin." Black ship turned, its seamless hull catching the light of the nebula, shining like a blade. As it prepared to jump not into the safety of hyperspace, but toward the encroaching dark, the delegates of the High Synod stood. It was a gesture of respect that had not been seen in 10,000 years. They watched the humans leave, understanding finally that the greatest victories are not won with fanfare and flags, but in the quiet, cold dark, where the hardest work is done by those willing to endure the silence. The screen faded to black, but the room remained charged with a new energy. The humans had defied the odds not by playing the game, but by changing the rules. And in doing so, they had saved them all.